The beautiful and triumphant life story of Eveline and Edward Hoffman has given new life to Heroes Hearts Incorporated and its mission to oppose discrimination and abuse in all forms, as well as their motto, do something good. Their existence is an example of what the Heroes Hearts, two hearts beating as one symbol represents, and are the premier representatives of Heroes Hearts Reconciliation Project. My name is Michelle Manu. I work in the world today as a humanitarian, a modern-day warrior, a metaphysician, and an advocate for personal transformation and for the healing of generational trauma. Today I am joined with Ed and Eveline Hoffman, who are both survivors of the Jewish Holocaust. Ed, a survivor of Auschwitz, a German Nazi extermination slave camp. Eveline, Ed, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eveline, before the Holocaust, what do you remember about your youth? Where were you born? Where did you live? What did your nuclear family look like?
Well, I was born in Paris, France, 1937. I don't remember too much. I was only 3, but from what I was told, I know I had a very happy childhood up to the age of 3. We lived in a place called Place de la République. It was the 3e arrondissement, and my father was a commercial wholesaler. He made leather jackets and coats and traveled all over France. He was very well known, very respected. And we lived on the 4th floor, walking up, which we were very used to doing. Wonderful place, a wonderful childhood. We used to go and get, at 4 o'clock, we'd get our baguette au chocolat. Was something I really loved. I remember, well, I was told that I did, because I don't really remember that. I did go back to France in 1948, and that's how I relearned the language.
What's a point in your life where you had a very traumatic realization concerning the Holocaust? Would you share with us what that revelation was and when it happened?
When I kind of discovered that I was a Holocaust survivor, because I never believed I was. There was a child survivor group in Los Angeles started by Sarah Moskowitz many years ago, and we lived not far from there, and we used to go support Eddy. We used to go there, and they had mainly child survivors that were there.
Professors.
Yeah, and they would tell stories and poetry and all that kind of stuff. And one day when I was home, I was living at home, Sarah called me up and she asked me if we were coming to the next child survivor group, and I said, yeah, I'll be sure to bring Eddy. I always go with him. No, I want to make sure I'm calling about you. And and I said, what do you mean me? So she says, well, you're a survivor also. And I said, no, I'm not. I said, I was in the United States. I was separated from my parents for 5 years, and I was in the United States all that time, most of that time, and I'm an American. I didn't go through the camps. I didn't go through trauma.
Right there.
And she said, oh, yes, you did. You were abandoned. I was so upset when she said that to me on the phone.
Because you knew.
No, because how dare her say I was abandoned? I wasn't abandoned. I was brought up here. I was okay. And she said, you were abandoned by your parents. And she just threw me for a loop. Anyway, I said, okay, I don't. Okay. So I went with him. And at this meeting, there was one lady who had written poetry about things that had happened to her. She was very good. And while I was listening to her, all of a sudden I had this overwhelming, you'll have to excuse me, I'll try not to fall apart.
It's all right.
Overwhelming feeling inside. I was feeling like I was going to bust open. I was like, I wanted to scream. I had no idea where this was coming from. I got so scared that I got up and I ran out of the room because I felt like I was going to just explode. And there's a lady sitting behind me who happened to be Sarah, and she followed me out. And I went out there, and I did. I started crying. I started hyperventilating, and she says, it's okay, it's okay. I'm a psychologist, and I help Holocaust survivors. And I said, but I'm not a survivor. Yes, you are. And anyway, this was something that made me realize that, you know, she explained to me why I was a Ben, and then I started to see her. Some unknown reason, something comes, your past comes to you. I mean, there's been many stories like this. And so I started seeing her, and she made me understand that I was a survivor in my own way, not to take away from him, because I said, I was safe. He lost his family. I did lose aunts and cousins, a lot of them. I was separated. My mother's sister had 4 girls, and we were very close when we were little. And they stayed in France. They were very blonde and very cute, and they wore crucifixes, and they were in hiding in France during the duration. And it's funny because we're so Americanized in my mind. I know no accent, and we were taller. Maybe it was the bread here, I don't know. Anyway, and they were short with a thick accents. And when we were reunited after the war, one of the gals had married a GI that she met in France and moved to New York. And I was in Cleveland, and I remember she came to visit at one time because I was with foster parents. And I always felt like I was a second-class citizen in a way, and I used to get hand-me-downs. I never got new clothes and all this kind of stuff. And the Jewish Family Service took really good care of us, and you know. But and then she came to visit, and I'll never forget that feeling when she came to visit. I said, "Oh my God, this beautiful woman! She's my cousin. She's my family. See, I do have somebody. I am somebody." She made me feel like I was somebody. It's an amazing feeling.
Connection.
But so that's really when, at the child survivor meeting, that's when I realized that I was a survivor, and I never really knew I was. And there's different versions of. I had
Survival.
PTSD, and I didn't know it. I can imagine. I mean, that word is used so loosely, and
It is.
you know. But that's really how I discovered that I was a survivor, and having opened up and everything, it really helped me a lot.
Thank you. Ed, prior to your captivity at Auschwitz, what did your nuclear family look like? What do you remember about your youth?
Well, we were a middle-class family. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor either. Mm-hmm. But I always kept to myself and was very happy. Mm-hmm. I had 2 brothers, and my mother, my father, my grandparents, and
Tell them about the river.
we had a big river called the Tisa. I used to go swimming over there all the time, during the summertime, of course. Not winter, because over there it gets so cold, even the windows are freeze up. But when I was a kid, maybe about 9, 10 years old, I decided to try to make my own living. It's a little bit early, but when I went to school, I saved enough money to buy some wrapped up candy. I took it in school. I used to sell them, and to other kids, because we didn't have no store to go and buy something. And then I accumulated enough money to able to buy from a half a kilo first to 1 kilo, then 2 kilos, and I sold everything. And
So you've been an entrepreneur for a while, and we'll get into your 7 successful businesses.
when my father came to me and he says, Boomy, oh, that was my nickname, Boomy. I want to give you pocket money for the week, and I refused it. I said to my father, I says, I got my own money. Because I made it up on the candies, whatever I sold. And then a little bit later on, the Hungarians came in, and then the Germans came in, and they created a ghetto first for Jews, and then they took us out to the train station and took us. They didn't tell us where.
Mm.
I never heard of Auschwitz, or I never heard of
Camps.
camps. We knew that there is a war between Germany and the rest of the world.
Thank you, Ed, for sharing. Eveline, when did the Holocaust start for you, and how did your family survive?
Well, excuse me, in June of 1940, the Germans marched into Paris, and my father worked in the underground, and he was reading every newspaper he could get his hands on. He was always meeting with other men. He was, in fact, he was part of a group of Zionist council of some sorts, where they found out what was happening, what was going on, and he knew what was coming. So he left shortly after they came because Nazis were getting, they were aware of what was, they found out about him and some of his groups, so he had to leave with a friend, and they took a lot of merchandise with them because he knew that he was going to be away for a while, and they drove to the south of France, and they had to drive at night because the planes were coming and they were shooting at the cars, so they only traveled at night with the lights off, and they went through a very dangerous route, but they got there, and he had told my mother, shortly after I leave, I want you to get up early in the morning and pretend you're going on a picnic. We lived in a building that had a courtyard where we had a manager called the concierge, and she was a very nosy concierge. And she'd look out, make sure she saw everything, and they were they couldn't wait to turn people in. Why, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, it seemed like everybody just was against us. Anyway, one morning we did, she was very clever, my mother. She put us like 3-4 outfits on. She cut the seams and put jewelry in there and all this kind of thing, papers, and sewed it up. And then she took a little suitcase that looked like a picnic basket, and we went off super early in the morning. We walked out the her three daughters, and we went down to the train station to take the train to go to the south, which was Vichy Free France, which was not really free, but the Germans weren't quite, they had their puppets there. The French police were in charge, not the Germans exactly. Anyway, we went down to the train station. Trains, they weren't moving, not going anywhere. So my mother we all walked down through many trains until we found an opening wagon, and she said, "Mes enfants, c'est là. This is the one. This is where we'll be." So we went inside the wagon. There was a lot of straw, and we found a little corner. My mother, it was really early, so there weren't too many people in this one, and she put like bales of straw for our little corner. And anyway, we were there, and the train did not move. It didn't move. It didn't move for 2 weeks. So she had brought some salami and cheese and for a while cans of sardines and pâté and all this kind of stuff. And she had a washcloth. In those days, we didn't have paper diapers, so that was a problem. And she had this little bowl. I don't even know how she managed all this, but and then after a while, we ran out of provisions, and she would go out and give my sister Jacqueline, she was only 8 at the time, to keep an eye on us and to watch us while she goes and tries to find water and food. And it's kind of difficult to talk about this. Anyway, she found things. She was very capable. Anyway, after about 2 weeks there, and also she used to tell us, if anybody comes in, if you see a soldier, look down. Don't look up at anybody. Don't look in their eyes. Don't call attention to yourself. Shrink back. And a couple of times, German Nazi would come on and look around, and because the car got, not the car, the train car got more and more crowded with people coming in, also wanting to travel. And the Germans had stopped all the trains, and they were only allowing a certain amount, or for whatever reason. Anyway, it was scary. After 2 weeks, the train started moving. And every time it stopped, she would try to go out for provisions, and we were so scared because we didn't know if she would be back, but she always made it back in time. And one day it started going, and the trip actually should have only taken a few hours to get to the south of France. So after 2 weeks, we did go to the south of France, and there were friends of my father that worked with him. There was a Jewish lady who married a partner of my father, and she harbored us. We stayed with her for a while. After a while, it was getting more and more dangerous, and my mother had to go and, well, wait a minute, no. We met up with my father.
Yes, he eventually came home.
Yeah, we met up
there.
with my father there, and he had a place. On our trip, we did stop in a place before we got there. There's just so much to remember. We stopped in a little town. That's what I wanted to tell you about. We stopped in a little town. The train, for some reason, had to stay there for a while. So we stayed there for about 3 days. We had developed sores all over our body, and my mother found a little tiny place to stay, and there was a little pond nearby. And so we went to the pond, and we were in the water splashing and having a grand old time. And then Jacqueline, the oldest one, got out of the water, and my mother said, "Oh, mon Dieu!" And she saw these little leeches all over my sister. And so she ran and got both Paulette and I, and we all had these leeches on us and didn't even realize. And my mother ran to the house and came back with this big container of salt and poured salt all over us because you couldn't pull those things off when they latch onto you. So anyway, am I getting into too much detail?
No, I just think it's wonderful that
yeah.
you know your father gave your mother some very explicit directions
yes,
on how
he
to
did.
travel, when to travel,
Yeah.
and she was able to find sustenance for you all,
Yes.
and you eventually made it. And
Yes.
that in itself is a wonderful reuniting.
Yes.
Knowing that you may not be reunited.
Yeah, we were reunited, and we stayed for 2 years, till 1942. We stayed on this farm. Yeah, and just want to tell you one story there, that on the farm there were chickens that we played with. Those were our toys, and there was a rooster that we were scared to death of. And one time, my father had a shortwave radio, and he used to listen to all the news. I mean, that was his pride and joy. Nobody had those. And one time when he was away, I said to Paulette, I was an instigator. I said to Paulette, I said, check, we have to find out who that little man is, where that voice is coming from, let's find him. And I coaxed her into poking in the back of that shortwave radio, and of course broke it. My father came home, and he was my father had a vile temper anyway, but he just went off the grid, so to speak. And what he did to punish us for doing that, and I blame Paulette. Paulette he knew I was the instigator. He put Paulette over his knee. He put corn on her poor little rear end, and took that rooster and had the rooster peck the corn off her rear end, and made me watch it because I was going to be next, and that was my punishment, to see what was going to happen to me, and that did happen to me. So anyway, maybe that's why I don't like roosters so much now. I'm kind of scared of them.
I can
but
see,
anyway, that was just one little incident among many others, but yeah, we were very happy.
Good, good. Thank you. You know, Ed, you also have a train in your story, and it was your entire family that was traveling. You were separated. And I want you to share a little bit with the audience about what happened when you arrived to Auschwitz. And also a second question, what if you had told the guards that you and your little brother were twins?
Well, yes, we were traveling in the train approximately about 2 or 3 days when we got to Auschwitz. I never heard of a name, and I didn't even speak Polish and all the thing. So, but my mother was highly educated. She finished college in Budapest, Hungary. And she got so upset that she tried to commit suicide. But my uncle, who was laying next to us, he saw her and cut her down right away. But we arrived at Auschwitz, and they assigned me, they separated us when we got off the wagons. Older people were on one line, men and women another line. Women, if they had any children, and some of the workers who worked on the wagons to cleaning out the wagons, who were Auschwitz, well, they were in the camp over there, from the camp. They tried to tell them you are twins. Well, I didn't take notice of it. I didn't know what they meant, and
What did they mean, Ed?
pardon?
What did they mean?
Well,
What happened to twins?
All the twins, if you told them, separated them, and they used them as guinea pigs.
For experiments.
Experimental.
Yeah.
I got first of all, they cut our hair, women and men, both of them. Their hair was cut, and assigned me to, they gave us new uniforms.
Uniforms.
Like heavy pajamas. And I was assigned to C barrack, right across. On the other side of the barrack, there was another camp, but it was fenced in. It was all the gypsies on one camp, and next to the gypsies were the women camp.
The women's camp.
Yes, we couldn't get in there at all, except I was very young, so they needed some cleaning, some clothes and other things. From our camp, who was in charge, they sent me because I was about 13, 14 years.
And what happened to your mother and your little brother?
I found out later on they were killed the same day. But I saw what happens to those people later on.
Can you share a little bit about that? The beheadings?
Well, the crematorium was about a half a block from me. And they took him in, and I never saw him again. All the people, hundreds of people walked into that, where they're supposed to get a
Gas chamber.
gas chamber, but they're supposed to get a shower over there. to be washed. And instead of that, they killed them right there. All the people, hundreds of people walked into that, where they're supposed to get
Gas chamber.
a gas chamber, but they're supposed to get a shower over there to be washed. And instead of that, they killed them right there.
There's a lot that we can talk about, the horrific things. You know, Eveline, you speak, both of you speak regularly at schools and to correct the record. What would you say to someone that would say that the Holocaust was not as gruesome or wasn't really the Holocaust? What do you say to someone like that?
Very uneducated people that, I mean, when they came in, they took pictures. They let them come and talk to us. How come millions of people have the same similar stories if it didn't happen? How could all these people, to me, it's just people who are so uneducated and have no moral, we can't understand it, but let them come to us and talk to us.
Besides, when I got into the camp over there, I saw all that, shoes, clothing, eyeglasses, piled up, tremendous amount, thousands of them. And they took it away from the people who they killed. And the hair they collected too, to make some clothes or warm, I don't know what for. But they collected the hair. And I saw all the women had no hair at all.
Ed, there's so many stories that you can tell that furthers what Eveline was saying. You know, you're trying to correct the record. You know, the Russian officer that the German officer that had to kill a Russian prisoner a day, and he befell a bad fate. There's also the cannibalism, right? And what happened to the Italian sailors? Would you just give us an example of some of the things that you saw as a young boy? You were whipped also in place of being hung. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. There was a German officer who hated the Russians. Especially he hated, and he had an extra room in one of the barracks. There was nothing in there except he pulled him in and he beat him until he was dead. So one day in the morning I had to go to the bathroom. And the Russian, about 5, 6, is a young man in Russian. I understood Russian at that time. He said, "Go back to the barrack, don't stay there." I said, "Why? I want to see what's going on." "No, go back to the barrack, take your word for it." No, I insisted to stay out. So, okay, if you want it that way. So they killed a pilot, a Russian pilot, who had a lot of friends there with us as a prisoner of war.
A German killed a friend of theirs who was a pilot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they pulled him in and they killed the pilot. And they had about 5 or 6 Russians waited in the afternoon.
For that German.
For the German. And they jumped him and they pulled him into the bathroom. And the bathroom was a big grave, like a hole, and just wooden cover on both sides. And they dropped him in there, and the toilet.
Vengeance,
And,
right? They were tired of it.
And they pushed him down to be drowned.
And he didn't want me to tell that to the kids. Didn't want to tell that to the kids when we were speaking at the schools. And I insisted. I said, it happened. You can't sugarcoat this. You have to tell them what happened.
So let's move on to a wonderful story.
Yes,
You're talking about children now.
yeah.
Eveline, I understand that Ed had a photo of you before your first date. And when did you find this out, and how did that make you feel? And how did you, Ed, get a photo of your future wife before you met her?
Oh my gosh. Well,
I lived in Cleveland, and I used to belong to a foreign students club. Now, and we went out on the weekend for dancing, and they had in a temple. In a temple, they had the band, and they had a lot of young men like me going there for dancing.
and young women like me from all over the city used to just go there, and we didn't know each other. And
We didn't know it.
I was sitting there like a wallflower. We used to wait to be asked to be, to dance.
Yeah.
And a friend of his. do you
Yeah,
want to tell?
they took a picture of me and another couple of guys.
And I was sitting in the background,
In
didn't
the
know them at
background.
all. Just happened to be in the background, and I came out in the picture.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we didn't know each other at this time.
Amazing.
Yeah.
No.
So years later, we found out about that. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah, we-
think your experience, well, how long have you been married? This is a really good
Okay,
question.
yeah.
My wife is married 65 years.
And I have 4 children.
Yes.
I don't know where he.
Well, I can't remember that far back,
Do
It's
you
a long
think
time.
your life experiences before you left shaped the way that you parented?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you think that your life experiences before you two married shaped the way you parented your children?
Oh,
I mean, how could it not, right? But I mean, at what
how
point
could
did you
it
start
not? How could it
sharing
not?
your
You mean
experiences?
affect the way we parented
Yeah.
because of our experiences?
Yes.
Oh, definitely. First of all, I think it's a wonderful thing that Ed can talk about it so easily. A lot of his friends that I knew, that I got to know and
It's
everything,
traumatic.
wouldn't talk about it, were angry, were bitter. But Ed he would talk about his experiences to anybody and share everything. And he did a lot of that at home. And as the kids were growing up, and enough, Dad, I don't want to hear about it anymore. Now it's different. When they got older, then they were more interested and wanted to hear about it more. But it does affect you how you raise your children. Be nice, enjoy everyone, but be a bit suspicious. Be careful. The world is not what you think it is. And, you don't want to impart that on them, but you do to a certain degree.
Right. It also affected you, Eveline. I mean, both of you have had 7 successful businesses. You've
Yeah.
since moved on, but during that time, one of your longtime employers was Jenny Craig. Do you feel that your experiences with
Food.
yes, well, it has affected your view, on food?
I remember when I came to Cleveland, to my mind, I was in hiding for 5 years. I came here in Christmas Eve can I tell you about that? Christmas Eve of 1942, my father and mother had already gone to Spain through a very dangerous route. We went through the Pyrenees Mountains by the Basque people who lived in the Pyrenees Mountains, were well paid, but they were very, very strong people and really hated the Nazis. They took us across the Pyrenees Mountains with other children on Christmas Eve because they felt that it would be more lax. There wouldn't be as many dogs and German posts along the way. I think they gave us wine because Paulette and I was 5 at the time. Paulette was barely 3, and we were carried. Jacqueline had to walk. And I remember our guide's name was Jean, and he used to tell us, you make sure you walk in the footsteps in front of you. Be very careful. You can fall over the side. Be quiet. Not a sound. The Germans can hear. The dogs can hear. It was blizzard, and it was cold. And anyway, it took us all night long, and we crossed the Pyrenees Mountains. We did get on the other side, we stayed in a little chalet for a few days recuperating, and then we went over the other side down to a place called La Molina, which is where we met up with my parents, and stayed in Spain, I'm shortening it a lot, in Barcelona for a short while till the Jewish distribution, Jewish joint distribution, Jewish family service took care of us. And my mother had a brother in Philadelphia. The only way that anyone could get to the United States was if they were sponsored by someone, if they had somebody there, because so many people were turned away. We were lucky enough to have an uncle in Philadelphia who sponsored us. And so we came to the United States through Portugal on a boat called the Serpa Pinta. There was a book written about that, 60 children. My parents couldn't come, they couldn't get visas, of course, only the children. So they stayed in Barcelona for the duration of the war, and we came to the United States and to Philadelphia. My parents, my uncle and his wife, they couldn't take care of us, so they took us directly to Cleveland, Ohio. There was a very big orphanage called Belfair there, and we stayed there and went to different foster homes. But let me tell you, when I came and saw, I never forgot that gorgeous Statue of Liberty. Wow, she was a sight to see.
We'll talk about liberty. It took more than 2 years for your book to come together, and it was recently released, Ode to Life.
The love story.
Yes. There's also Statue of Liberty. There's a liberation. Ed, would you please speak about how you were liberated from Auschwitz?
It wasn't in Auschwitz.
No, he was in several. He was in 5-6 camps.
Oh, okay.
He was liberated from Ebensee.
Okay, please.
Austria.
Who liberated you?
Patton.
General Patton. He didn't know
But
who he was.
I didn't know who he was. He looked, some high-ranking officer, and I had no idea, and I couldn't speak a word of English.
Well, you had an English passport. You had an opportunity to dodge the draft, if you would, but you chose to stay and serve.
Yeah, because...
Why?
Well, first I went back home to find maybe my brother who survived.
Anyone.
Anyway, the mayor saw me in town. He was a good friend of my father's. And he was happy to see me. He lived in a big house, no children. He said he insisted I stay with him. And then the police came, and he was a friend of my father's too. And they talked to each other, and they called me in, and they said, Ed, we want you to go to Kiev, Ukraine, to college, and we'll pay for it. And here is the papers and money for your fare. Well, I didn't like the system, really. That's one of the reasons. Communism.
Speaking of, I want to ask you, I'm sorry to interrupt, because we have so many stories, and we can find it in your book, Ode to Life.
Yeah.
That's true.
You've lived under every governmental structure. What do you feel is most beneficial for humankind at this time?
For the humankind?
Yeah, I mean, what do you think is most beneficial as far as a governmental structure? Is it communism? Is it, what would you? Okay.
I lived under
Democracy.
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 And the best country on the world is the United States to live on. I love this country, and when I came here from Britain, because I lived in Britain for six years, and
You were drafted shortly after you came.
as soon as I came here, they drafted me. I didn't know how they got the draft information about me and all that thing, but I received a letter that I have to report.
And you were happy to
board.
serve because you love this
I was,
country.
I was very happy about it because I felt I owe, owe something to the United States that they liberated me. And so I could have went back to Britain if I wanted to.
Oh, there's a
because
whole story about it. You have to get the book and read it.
Yes, you have to get the book.
I mean, he could go on for hours and tell you all the
Yes,
things that happened.
I would love to ask both of you. And now you have taken on a new life. You're an actress, and
Yeah.
that's just amazing. And so, Ed, Eveline, Ed, together and individually, what brings you joy in your life now?
Oh my. Living here in California for one thing, but just brings us joy. Yeah, I mean, besides the family and my children and the community I live in, it's just being free to do whatever we want, and we don't have to be afraid. I remember someone told me once at the child survivor meeting, was speaking, said, "Be friendly to all your neighbors, but have a gun in your drawer." And I just like, oh my God, I don't want to live like that, be that frightened all the time, and I'm not. It's the joy of being, first of all, living here in Laguna Woods Village is the best thing that ever. I mean, we've been all over. And
It's a beautiful place.
Wonderful place to be. And here you can find out what you're good at or what you would love to do, and you have opportunities, and it's so easy. You can't be bored. You can only be happy here.
I love it. Ed, you also make jewelry here.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a hobby to me.
It's beautiful.
And before that, I used to be a furrier. Mink coats.
Yeah. He made this. See?
I know, it's gorgeous.
But I made mink coats
Yeah.
before that.
Yeah, that was one of his things. But what brings you joy, Eddie?
But you brought me there.
That was the
Spoken like
right answer, honey.
a wonderful husband.
That was a
Of
wonderful
how many years?
65 years.
65 years.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I have a sister who, my older sister is married 70 years. My younger sister passed
Wow.
away. But yeah.
She lived here too.
Okay.
We met in Cleveland, and after a while we decided to get married. At least Eveline decided.
Well, we met on a blind
Eveline
date.
decided you're getting married.
We married on a blind date. We met on a blind date.
Yeah.
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 It was a blind date. Yeah. He drove a car for, make a long story short, which is explained in Ode to Life, the love story.
Yes.
It tells all about it. We met on a blind date, and it was, for him, it was like, if everyone's seen The Godfather, Michael there, where he falls in love with this young woman, this happened to him, and I just like wanted to run because he was just so enraptured with me. I don't
Wow.
know why, but anyway, he was. And he was
He
a man.
still
He
is.
was a man of the world. I was very young at the time. I was only 19. We got married a year later. Yeah.
We're jumping around in this interview, so I
Yeah, I
apologize,
know.
but I would
Yeah.
love for you to speak quickly on Krupp and Spears and how they exchanged slave
I
labor.
worked for Krupp and Spears.
German companies.
Yeah.
Who's currently still make
In the-
some
well,
appliances,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's 5 Tagen Marktstadt was the town, and they had a big company. They made those cannons and all that thing.
They made the V1 and the
B-
V2 rockets. Didn't
No,
they? No,
that was in Ebensee.
that was in Ebensee, but that
Yeah.
was those companies.
Yeah.
What would you make in return for the labor? How would they pay you?
Oh,
Well,
they didn't really pay. They didn't have to.
we
but
got
they
3 cigarettes a week.
Yeah.
3 cigarettes a
3
week.
cigarettes a week. And it's amazing. You told me how people would just do
I
anything
used-
for a cigarette.
I used
And
to
forfeit
sell
food.
Yeah.
one cigarette for one ration of the bread,
Wow.
one slice of bread. It was a small bread for 9 people. They cut it.
Paper thin.
Eveline, you have a story too on croup. So can you tell us your
Oh.
most recent story
I had a
when?
very sweet neighbor who came over one day and she said, I'm trying to clear my counter and I have this toaster, if you want it. And I said, oh, I could use a toaster. I didn't have one, So I took it and I looked down at it and then she left and I looked at it. It said croup on it. I thought, oh my God, this is made from croup. But it was the best toaster I ever had, and I decided, well, I'm not buying it, but I will use it.
Made in Germany.
It was made in Germany. Well, it was made by Krupp, the same
Krupp
people who
company.
used the slave labor to help the war effort. So that was quite an experience when I saw that. It was quite a feeling that I had, yeah. But I did get rid of it finally. I didn't want it around.
Finished with basic training, and the captain came to me and says, oh, Hoffman, yeah,
This is 6 months later.
Hoffman, you didn't do any basic. He says, I can't sign you off. I said, well, do what you can. He said, really? Okay. So get out to my Jeep, and he took me from one place to another one afternoon. Shoot, do this, do that.
Check.
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 He says,
Requirements.
you graduated
Oh, wow.
in one afternoon. Okay. And I look at the paper, he says, my suggestion to you, to the military, that you should go to Chicago to teach baking for the military. Or you pass 3 languages. He said you can go to military intelligence school if you want. It's up to you. So I figured, well, if I go to military intelligence school, it would be better for me because I will bake all my life. So I can learn something. So I volunteered to go to the military intelligence. And so they sent me to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, 82nd Airborne. And I spent, the company commander over there was Ernest Hemingway's son,
Jack. Right?
Jack. We became very good friends. I used to go out with him on double dates, not only on double dates, but he used to love to go up the mountains fishing.
Real early in the morning.
I asked him, I said, do you ride like your dad? He says, oh, no, the only thing I can do is fish. I said, well, okay, do me a favor, I says, because he was waking me up very early in the morning to go fishing. I said, do me a favor, get somebody else. He said, Ed, it's an order. You come with me and I'll buy you a big breakfast and this and that. And wear civilian clothes, not in the military clothes. Why? Because after, in the afternoon, we'll go to the officers' club and have dinner and,
Yeah.
And I couldn't go there because if I'm a private, you cannot go there. You have to be an officer. So I used to go out with him quite a bit. But I told him, I said, look, I said, why don't you send me to overseas? But I said, don't send me to Europe because I've been all over Europe. I said, send me to the Far East. He said, you're crazy. He said, why don't you stay here No, I said, might as well. I still have another year to go in the military. Might as well see the world.
Where did you go?
Well, they sent me,
Japan.
in the Korean War, during the Korean War. So they sent me for a little while to Korea, and then to the company, 1st Cavalry I ended up with. They sent me to Hokkaido, Japan. So I spent most of the time in Hokkaido. I used to go to Sapporo and to Tokyo, all over there.
Tell them that a couple of years ago you were voted Veteran of the Year in Southern Orange County.
Orange County.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Was Orange
Yeah.
County. And
And you got several different awards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
name off some of these amazing awards. I mean, one also took you to the Pentagon. So can you talk a little bit about that?
yeah, well, I went to the honor flight to Washington, D.C., where the officer pushed me around over there, all the museums and everything else.
Beautiful.
He was
So-
from the Pentagon. That's where you got the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he gave me this hat,
Turn it around.
the
so they
1st
can see.
Cavalry,
Yeah.
1st Cavalry,
Yeah.
3rd Army, the Korean,
Yes.
Korean banner
Red.
flag or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the 3rd Army.
Yeah, he gave him that hat. He
Yeah,
liked him a lot.
yeah. And
That's right.
so.
Is there any one award, Ed, that stands out for you when you think about it? You've received several awards. Which one stands out to you?
Well, all of them.
All of them.
But I was proud to serve because I felt that United States liberated me from the Germans.
Yeah.
And I was proud of it. And I felt like a little bit guilt that I have to pay something back.
This has been an amazing time being with both of you and hearing your life stories, before and you met each other and as you met and now.
I just want to interject something. If
Yes,
if you have a
please, of
moment.
course.
When we were speaking at the schools, usually it was middle school, because anyway, when we first started speaking, there were just like one class. Well, a year or two later, there were like 200, 300 children and adults and everything. But we had a Q&A afterwards, and there was always one of the kids that would ask, how do you feel now about the Germans? Do you hate the Germans? How do you, And I said, no, I don't. If you hate Germans, you just eat yourself up. In fact, when my grandson, when in high school in San Diego, we went down and spoke at his school, he asked us to. And he was so taken by this that he asked me one time, he came to us and he said, Meme, he calls me Meme, that's, in French. He said, I would like to tattoo something over my heart. And I said, what? You can't tattoo. I said, don't put tattoos on yourself. You're too young. And in the Jewish religion, it's not allowed anyway. And anyway, he asked his mother and he asked permission. He wanted to tattoo over his heart in my handwriting, because he liked my handwriting. He wanted it, if you hate, you hurt yourself. But I want it in French. So I found that he insisted, his mother was happy, was okay with it. So I wrote it down, on déteste, on se blesse. That's in French, it sounds nicer. You hate, you hurt yourself. And he did that, he had it tattooed over his heart.
Eveline, Ed, thank you for being here today.
Oh, you're welcome. It was our pleasure.
Well, I'm Michelle Manu with Ed and Eveline Hoffman today. Thank you for joining us here for Channel 6, Video 1, and 5 Bird Productions for Heroes' Hearts. Do something good.